Still, think the US Navy can stop China after what happened in the Middle East. Watch this. Before you answer that question, I need you to consider 4 facts that most people do not know. Fact 1. The most powerful navy in human history cannot sail its aircraft carriers through a 3-4 kilometer strait controlled by a country with a GDP smaller than Texas. Fact 2. A group of Yemeni rebels with no air force, no navy, and no formal military training has been shooting at American warships for over a year, and the United States Navy has not stopped them. Fact 3. The Iran war has pulled 3 American aircraft carriers, 29 to 43% of all available THAAD missile defense systems, and tens of thousands of American troops to the Middle East away from the Pacific, exactly where China needs them gone. Fact 4. China has been watching every single one of these developments with the attention of a student who just found the exam answers. And China's military analysts have been writing reports, wargaming scenarios and updating battle plans based on everything America has shown and failed to hide in the Middle East for the past 2 years. This video is not about whether America can beat China in a war. America has the most powerful military in history. This video is about what China has learned, what China has copied, what China has built specifically because of what it watched America struggle with, and why the US Navy that China would face in the Taiwan Strait is not the same Navy most Americans think it is. Let us start with the single most important military lesson of 2026, the one that every defense analyst is discussing privately, but almost nobody is explaining clearly to the public. The United States Navy cannot sail its aircraft carriers through the Strait of Hormuz. Not because America is weak, because Iran spent 30 years building a system specifically designed to make American carriers suicidal targets in confined waters. Here is the history. In the 1990s, American intelligence noticed something unusual on Iran's islands of Abu Musa and the Tums just inside the Strait of Hormuz. Iran was installing anti-ship missiles inside reinforced concrete and steel bunkers. Missiles designed to track and strike ships passing near the strait. By the end of the 1990s, the U.S. Navy quietly began reducing carrier transits through the strait. By the 2010s, American carriers stopped going in entirely. Today, in a war against Iran, the United States Navy's most powerful assets are sailing well offshore outside the range of Iranian missiles. The USS Abraham Lincoln, the USS Gerald R. Ford, 3 carrier strike groups deployed to the region. And not one of them can enter the Strait of Hormuz without risking getting blown to pieces. One analyst at Responsible Statecraft wrote it plainly. The days of omnipotent U.S. sea power as a power projection instrument close to well-defended shorelines are coming to an end. The shore-based missile has beaten the carrier. Not everywhere, not in the open ocean, but in confined waters near a defended coast, the equation has shifted. Iran proved it, and China took very careful notes. Analyst assessment, Responsible Statecraft analysis. Atlantic Council confirmed. Now here is the second lesson China absorbed, and this one is even more alarming if you understand the math. The Houthis are a militia in Yemen, one of the poorest countries on earth. They have no air force, no navy, no satellites, no advanced manufacturing. Their weapons come from Iran. And for over a year, they shut down one of the most important shipping lanes in the world while trading blows with the United States Navy and surviving. During a 5-2-day American bombing campaign against the Houthis in Yemen, the Navy and Indo-Pacific Command were, according to the New York Times, very concerned about the rate at which American forces were burning through munitions. In a single Eisenhower carrier strike group deployment, American warships fired 770 weapons for self-defense and airstrikes. Let that number absorb 770 weapons. Each Standard Missile-2 interceptor costs between $2 and $4 million. Each SM-6 costs $4 million. Each Tomahawk costs $2 million. The Houthis were launching drones that cost approximately $20,000 each. Iran's Shahed 136 drone costs $30,000. A single American destroyer firing one SM-2 to intercept a $30,000 drone is spending 100 times more than the attacker spent to launch it. At that exchange rate, America runs out of interceptors before the Houthis run out of drones. The Council on Foreign Relations published an analysis titled, "The Houthis Have Defeated the U.S. Navy," not because the Navy lost ships, because the Navy was ordered not to fight decisively, because defensive interception of cheap drones is economically unsustainable, and because the same math, cheap offensive weapons versus expensive defensive interceptors, is the foundation of China's entire anti-access strategy against American carriers in the Pacific. China did not just watch the Middle East passively. Chinese military analysts produced detailed assessments. Chinese war game planners updated their Taiwan invasion scenarios. And Chinese weapons procurement changed based on what they saw. Here is what Newsweek reported directly, citing multiple defense analysts about what China learned from watching America fight Iran and the Houthis. Lesson 1: Drones. Shore-based precision missiles and innovative tactics can challenge and even neutralize traditional expensive naval assets. China's DF-series missiles, the DF-21D carrier killer, the DF-26, the DF-17 hypersonic, were built around exactly this concept. Shore-based missiles that can track and hit moving aircraft carriers thousands of miles away at sea. Iran proved the concept works in confined waters. China built the same concept at vastly greater range and scale. Lesson 2. America's weapons stockpiles are not infinite. The Iran war has consumed enormous quantities of precision munitions. Patriot interceptors were depleted so severely that 48 THAAD interceptors were moved from South Korea to the Middle East, removing them from the Pacific precisely where they would be needed if China moved on Taiwan. An Atlantic Council tracker confirmed that 29 to 43% of all available U.S. THAAD systems are currently committed to the Iran war. Lesson 3. America's carriers have to sail around threats, not through them. The USS George W. Bush, heading to the Middle East, took the route around Africa's Cape of Good Hope, specifically to avoid the Red Sea and Houthi missile range. A carrier that has to sail around a threat is a carrier that arrives late. Lesson 4. America cannot be everywhere simultaneously. 3 carriers in the Middle East means 3 carriers not in the Pacific. Let us talk about the DF-21D specifically, because this is the weapon that most directly answers the question in the title of this video. The DF-21D is a ballistic missile. It was designed for one specific purpose: to kill American aircraft carriers. It has a range of approximately 1,500 kilometers. It travels at hypersonic speeds during its terminal phase, meaning the final approach toward its target. It carries a maneuvering re-entry vehicle, a warhead that can adjust its flight path during descent to track a moving ship. No American carrier has ever faced a weapon like this in combat. The United States Navy has never had to defend a carrier strike group against a ballistic missile specifically designed to strike a moving ship from over 1,000 kilometers away while maneuvering at hypersonic speed. But here is what makes this even more significant. The DF-21D was China's first-generation carrier killer. China has since developed the DF-26 range 4,000 kilometers, nicknamed by the U.S. military as the Guam Killer, because it can reach American bases in Guam from mainland China, and the DF-17 hypersonic glide vehicle, which travels at Mach 5 to Mach 10 and can maneuver unpredictably during flight, specifically to evade missile defense systems. Analysts at Responsible Statecraft wrote directly, many wargames today conclusively demonstrate that the United States Navy would take serious and perhaps unacceptable losses from these missiles in any war against China. Not maybe, not possibly, conclusively. These are not fringe opinions. These are the assessments produced by the organizations that advise the Pentagon on force planning. Analyst Assessment Responsible Statecraft. Multiple wargame assessments. Here is the strategic reality that should concern every American most right now, and it connects the Iran war directly to Taiwan. The United States has 11 aircraft carriers. Congress requires a minimum of 11. The USS Nimitz is being decommissioned in May 2026, dropping total inventory to 10. Of those 10, 2 are currently deployed to Operation Epic Fury in the Middle East. A third, the USS George W. Bush, is on its way around Africa to join them. That means 3 of America's 10 operational carriers are committed to the Iran war. The only carrier currently in the Pacific is the USS George Washington, undergoing maintenance in Yokosuka, Japan, unavailable for operations through at least mid-2026. The USS Abraham Lincoln completed operations in the Pacific and moved to the Middle East. The Atlantic Council's Forward Defense Tracker confirmed this explicitly. Operation Epic Fury is stressing aircraft carriers, bombers, and missile defense in ways that will have an impact in other theaters. That phrase, other theaters, means the Pacific. China watched the USS Abraham Lincoln leave the Pacific for the Middle East. China watched the THAAD batteries leave South Korea for the Middle East. China watched the Marine Expeditionary Units deploy to the Arabian Sea. Every asset that moves from the Pacific to the Middle East is an asset that cannot simultaneously deter China from moving on Taiwan. The National Interest published an analysis warning that a prolonged crisis in Hormuz could drive the U.S. Navy out of its long-standing base in Bahrain, and that having allies fracture America's Eurasian presence would be a haphazard way to pivot to the Pacific. The Pacific is not empty, but it is the least full it has been in decades. Confirmed facts, Atlantic Council Tracker, USNI News. Here is the part that almost nobody covers. Taiwan is watching the same Middle East war. China is watching and drawing the same conclusions. But Taiwan's conclusions are different. Taiwan is not studying how to use cheap drones to defeat a navy. Taiwan is studying how to use cheap drones and shore-based missiles to stop an invasion fleet. Taiwan has been building its asymmetric defense capability at Washington's direct urging for years. Anti-ship missiles that can strike China's naval fleet, the largest in the world by hull count from Taiwan's coast. Taiwan deployed its first American MQ-9B Sky Guardian surveillance drones specifically to track Chinese military movements. Analysts at the Atlantic Council noted that the Houthis' success in using ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and unmanned vehicles, quote, showed that Taiwan and other regional actors might adopt similar shore-based systems to blunt Chinese maritime power projection. The same lesson China learned from watching Iran, Taiwan learned it too. Taiwan is quietly becoming the defensive version of Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. A shore-based anti-access system that makes the waters around it lethally dangerous for any ship that approaches without its permission. The difference Taiwan has: American weapons, American training, and an American security guarantee. And after watching what Iran did to global shipping with Iranian weapons, Taiwan's defense planners are sleeping slightly better, knowing that a country with American weapons and American satellite support has capabilities Iran could never dream of. Now let us answer the question directly and honestly. Can the U.S. Navy stop China? The answer depends entirely on where and when you are asking. In the open Pacific Ocean away from China's coast, American carrier strike groups with F-3, 5Cs, and Virginia-class submarines remain extraordinarily lethal. No navy on Earth can match American power in blue water deep ocean operations. This is not propaganda. It is the honest assessment of every independent defense analyst, including Chinese ones. In the waters immediately surrounding Taiwan, within range of China's DF-21D and DF-26 missiles, American carriers face a level of threat they have never faced in combat before. Not a level that makes them helpless, but a level that makes losses serious losses, a realistic probability that American commanders have to plan for. The war games say unacceptable losses. In the specific scenario of an Iran war happening simultaneously with a Taiwan crisis, which is exactly the scenario we are in right now, American forces are stretched across two theaters. THAAD batteries committed to the Middle East cannot simultaneously protect Taiwan. Carriers in the Indian Ocean cannot simultaneously deter China in the Pacific. Every dollar of munitions fired at Iranian targets is a dollar not stockpiled for a potential Pacific conflict. The 1945 defense publication wrote directly, "The U.S. Navy is in big trouble." Not because China has won, because the gap between American and Chinese naval power, which was once enormous, has been closing for 20 years. And the Iran war is accelerating that closing, by drawing resources, attention, and weapons away from the theater that matters most. Analyst Assessment 1945. Responsible Statecraft, Atlantic Council. Here is the part that needs to be said to complete the honest picture. America is not ignoring any of this. The Pacific Deterrence Initiative has pumped billions into hardening positions across the first and second island chains. The Typhoon mid-range missile battery in the Philippines, Tomahawks and SM-6S with a range of 2,500 kilometers, is now a shore-based threat to Chinese naval bases on the southern coast. The same concept Iran used against American carriers' shore missiles against ships. America is now deploying against Chinese ships from Philippine soil. The Ensuring Naval Readiness Act is rebuilding American shipyard capacity through partnerships with Finland, Japan, and South Korea. Virginia-class nuclear submarines, the quietest, most lethal hunter-killer submarines ever built, are being transferred to Australia under AUKUS and expanded in production. The U.S. Army is fielding the Red Dragon autonomous drone for 400-kilometer precision strikes, America's own answer to the cheap drone revolution Ukraine demonstrated and the Houthis weaponized. And Japan, the country whose rearming China fears most, is now a formal military partner producing PAC-3 interceptors for American stockpiles, building Australian frigates, and deploying missiles on islands that ring China's access routes. America's answer to the carrier vulnerability problem is not to abandon carriers. It is to surround China's potential targets with so many shore-based threats from so many allied nations that China faces the same equation America faces in the Strait of Hormuz. Entering contested waters is survivable on paper and catastrophic in practice. Confirmed facts: Atlantic Council, Pentagon, AUKUS agreements. Here is the bottom line for every person who watched this video. The U.S. Navy remains the most powerful military force in history on the open ocean. Nobody seriously disputes that. But the Iran war has revealed something that was already known in classified war game rooms and is now visible to the entire world, including Beijing. Shore-based missiles beat carriers in confined waters. Cheap drones beat expensive interceptors at scale in sustained campaigns. Simultaneous theaters stretch resources beyond comfortable limits. And weapons stockpiles built for one conflict are not simultaneously available for another. China has been studying every one of these lessons for 20 years. The DF-21D was not built to fight Iran. It was built because China watched America project carrier power and decided to build the thing that specifically defeats carrier power. The Houthis in Iran did not invent these lessons. They validated them. And validation in real combat against the actual US Navy is infinitely more valuable to Chinese war planners than any theoretical model. The question China's military is asking right now is not, can we beat the US Navy? The question is, at what specific point in time, in what specific geographic location, with what specific combination of US commitments elsewhere, does the calculation shift from impossible to possible? The Iran war just changed some of those variables. Not all of them, but some. And in military planning, some is enough to update the war plan. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next chapter of this story is being written right now in both the Middle East and the Taiwan Strait simultaneously.